Welcome to the Visibility Brief, a Yext series where we sit down with business leaders to explore how AI is transforming brand visibility. I'm Rebecca Colwell, SVP of Marketing at Yext, and I am joined today by Christian Ward, our Chief Data Officer, for an illuminating conversation about how AI is changing how brands take their message to the world. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me.
So great to have you back. So when we left off on our earlier conversation, we were talking quite a bit about how AI is changing brand visibility. There is another whole factor here about the stories or the way that AI describes my brand.
Correct.
How does AI decide what to say about me?
So it's a great question. Without going too far into the weeds, one of the best ways to maybe describe it is that it's based on probability. And so when we say that large language models or AI is probabilistic, what we're saying is if I were to say to you all, kill two birds with one
Stone.
Okay. Congratulations, you're a large language model and you understand probability. It's really, that really is what it is. It's basically this understanding of, if I were to look online about your brand in all the places I could, so the data in third parties like Google or listings, on your website, in social posts, on reviews, if I were to look in all those places, what is the level of consistency that I'm seeing? So if I see the same location information, same brand, same products, same services, the more I see that, what's happening is in the model, there's a probability being attached to that being the correct answer. And so what it's doing is based on the context you gave it, whatever you asked it, whatever your conversation is going on, it's going to come back to you and say, from a mathematical perspective, this is the probability that this is the right information. And so realistically, for a lot of brands, that can be uncomfortable because it's not maybe exactly what you said, but it's a very high probability. Another great way to put it is, I don't live in New York anymore, but if I came to New York and let's say I was brand new, and I went to you and to everybody at this company, I said, I really want to try a great slice of New York pizza. Where should I go? If everyone at the company stood up and said, you want to go to Goodfellas Pizzeria. Here's the address, here's the phone, here's the times, here's what to get, here's the products. If you all agreed and I saw that, how confident would I be that that's the right answer? Pretty confident. So that's the whole construct of how this works. So it decides, but it's really deciding based on what you've put out there and what you maintain to enforce those high probabilities. Because if at the same time, if everyone, and this is probably what would happen, everyone has a different opinion on what the best za is in New York, if it was really random and a ton of noise, I can't really get a great probability that this is the right answer. So it's always looking for the best answers based on that math.
Really interesting. What does that mean for me as a brand then? Should I just go write the same sentence 5,000 times on a blog post?
That's actually, it's funny you said that. That is some ways that people are trying to get the LLMs to pick up. They're sort of spamming it by putting like sort of the same copy out there. That doesn't necessarily work the same way either. When you're talking about this, all models, and this is both Google Search Classic and the new AI flavored, all models are built on the same sort of principles of data strategy, which is they're looking for fresh data, so newer data, knowing that that's like a proof of life signal that you're still there, you're still in business. They're looking for consistency across authoritative sources. So your website would be one, but they want to say, well, does that match this other authoritative source? They're looking at the recency. Have you touched it lately? Which is a little different than the freshness in terms of frequency. And they're always looking for the depth of the data too. So ideally, if you're a model and you find that the depth from your brand, you have great depth, you're offering a lot of great, what we would call structured data. That data is consistent in lots of places and it's been refreshed recently. All of those are factors that give confidence to the model. Now I'm using the word confidence, but really what I'm saying is a high probability that that's the right answer for your brand. The part that's a little different for brand marketers, that's probably one of these uncomfortable zones, is it's not going to say exactly the way you put on your website what the answer is. And to a large extent, you can't blame them. If you try and sue them for copyright infringement, they're going to stop taking entire blocks of sentences. So they're doing it where it's recomputing and rephrasing it, but it's also as personal as anything we've ever wanted in marketing. So if I've explained, I think in the last episode I mentioned a child with an allergy. If I've explained it to that, it's actually going to interpret the menu and say, by the way, you should maybe not have Katie, there's certain things, or maybe ask them about their policies. So there's this amazing other thing happening, which is you have a vision of your brand that you want to convey, and the LLM is interpreting it in real time to the needs or the interests or the memories and the personal behavior of the consumer. It is tough in some ways. You want it to all be exactly as you had it. That's why we tend to focus a lot more at Yext on the structured data. That realistically, it's sort of the objective facts I was talking about. The objective facts you got to get right, and you got to get them everywhere, and you got to get that you can repeat, and you should, and it should be syndicated and always correct and all consistent, because that's what is going to give that high probability. But in other things like your brand voice and other things, that may not get through because it's really in the model's voice now, not yours.
Sure. Let's talk more about structured data. For a layperson like myself who may not understand what that means, give me an example of some structured data that I as a brand might want out there.
Sure. So when we say structured data, in many ways, what we're saying is there's almost in the code or in the layout, there is an implied repeatability to it. So for example, if I were to say, oh, I can't wait to go get my Mustang. When I say Mustang, in the code, I can actually tell it that I mean my horse and not my car. So there's sort of this subliminal language in classic search engine optimization. We call it schema markup, but really every data set has this. You could call it metadata. It's data about the data. And so structure is where you can add that metadata. And so when you're building your website or you're uploading your phone number, like phone numbers are pretty unique. They're not perfectly unique because they can get reused, but they have a structure. Every country has structure codes. That's what we're talking about, is structure that way. So if you think of a product catalog, in a product catalog, you'll see there's often a table of here's the measurements, here's how much it weighs, here's how much, that's all structure. Versus unstructured, which is this conversation. This conversation is unstructured. And so one of the big areas that I think brands can very much focus on, and you can use large language models to do this, is extracting structure from unstructured. So this conversation, we're going to touch on a lot of things, but there's going to be key points that you can almost break into atomic units of structure. And that's what the models are all based on. So that's where you want to focus.
Interesting. Okay. So how do I go about structuring my data? Do I just create like a big Excel sheet?
So I'll give you a live example that I've done plenty of times with clients, and it's sort of fun. Go to any of your clients or any brand website. So whatever XYZ brand. I go to their website and I grab a page. You can actually just hit Control A to copy all of it, Control C, open a large language model, paste in just everything that was on the page, and then say to it, can you give me a table of all the structured data on this page? And it will show you everything that you do and don't have structured. Then you can take that to your tech team and go, why isn't this structured? The AI doesn't see it. Why don't you see it? Why we should do that? So as a brand, one of the best things that we always talk about is if you're not really sort of analyzing what you're putting out there, that's step one. You want to first understand what could be structured that we're not structuring, because it's a big advantage. If you can start to structure more, the problem with most websites and most platforms is if you were to ask them all the things the IT department has to get done, getting the schema markup and the structure on the page is like way down here. And it's because they're like, well, there's marketing wants brand, there's all these tools, we want to track everything. Get the structure right. And I think it's still a very small percentage of websites that go the extra mile of spoon feeding. It's a great way to think of, you're spoon feeding the models your brand information the way they want to be fed, which is there's no ambiguity. I literally know he meant a horse and not a car.
Interesting. And I imagine it's a lot faster than the model having to try to read and interpret the page on its own.
Yes. And so this was an experiment that we did here at Yext, which is I took a couple of pages from one of the brands that we work with, and I took one of their single locations. So it was a fast food restaurant. And I analyzed in the browser how many megabytes it was for the browser to render this page, because there's the menu, there's pretty pictures, there's all this stuff. It was actually 380 megabytes for one page. If you take that and do what I just explained of extracting the structure, 20 kilobytes. So you're talking an order of magnitude difference in terms of the actual knowledge that the large language model is interested in versus it crawling and trying to figure out what's going on this big, heavy page. And so when we look at this is why there's lots of discussion out there, is it's almost like we're ending up where there's going to be two webs. Today, they're conflated. Google kind of said, you know what, just put it all on one page for the consumer and for the machine. We'll figure it out. And that gave them a big edge. But a lot of these large language models are going, listen, your menu's adorable, but they just want to know if there's a tree nut allergy problem, right? So that's structure, and it wants to keep the compute. For every large language model, there's memory and compute. Memory and compute work together. The more you make me have to bring into memory and then think about, the less I'm going to want to use your page, because you're wasting a lot of my compute, and I won't be able to answer the question of the consumer well if you waste all my strength on this. Compute, another way to think about it is you're studying for a test and it's getting late at night. You're not really learning anything anymore. You're tired. That's what's happening with lack of compute. So if you give it great structure, it stays engaged, it can process it all, and it can give better answers.
Excellent. Are there any things I should be doing differently as far as how I actually write the content on my page? I mean, are we still in the era of keyword stuffing and all that fun
The
SEO
white on
stuff?
white text.
Exactly.
Yeah. So generally speaking, right now, there is a lot of academic study around this. And technically, we typically refer to it as chunking. So there are different ways that AI ingests the data. It always makes me think of the Goonies. But chunks, so to speak, is different chunks there's different strategies to them. So originally, chunks were sort of just levels of what we call tokens, just like take 100 tokens and that's your chunk. We've gotten a lot smarter on that. That's actually a lot of the advancement that you're seeing in AI returning better answers. Like the idea in our writing is that one paragraph, if you're following the old grammar, like it's the introduction of another concept or another area. The LLMs weren't capturing that because they were just doing characters and letters. And so now there's smarter chunking where it's like, it'll look for the first sentence and then it'll look at the last sentence. It won't even necessarily process the middle unless those two tell it that that's a good chunk. So it's getting much, much smarter. They actually call it smart chunking, Goonies. So you go through and it's all of these levels of this data where you say there's not one way to do it. So for marketers, I'd be a little cautious. There's a lot of sort of expert opinions out there right now. It's changing so quickly. Like, for example, Gemini's context window, its ability to compute a large amount of content, kind of made that, I don't care if you have a 2,000 word blog or a 200 word blog, because it could take the encyclopedia in one prompt. So there's different things. In other words, they might solve that before you figured out a great way to get that edge case or that little bit of advantage. Ideally, it's not so much about how I write it. It's much more, right now at least, it's much more about getting the structure in the data on the page. Anything that should be structured is structured. The rest of it, like your narratives and things like that, you can add some structure in there, but ideally you're not quite there in terms of optimizing perfectly for this. But again, there's a lot of opinions on this. I see it all over the web. People are redoing their entire websites, ideally structured for AI. And I'm a little bit like, listen, I mean, in one more model, none of that might matter. So like, let's be really cautious on spending good dollars where it's not exactly obvious.
Sure. Oh, that's really interesting. In our earlier discussion, we had talked about all of these different citations that AI takes into account with structured data. Is there anything new or different that marketers should be trying as far as creating really lightweight page, like location pages or things like that, like to just get that information out into the world?
Yes, we've seen, so there's one thing in this citation study that we're publishing that was really fascinating. So a lot of our clients have stores or location specific pages. So they'll have a page. So let's say you have majorbrand.com and then you have locations.majorbrand.com. What we have found is those localized pages work really well. Remember I said last episode, we were discussing this concept of, instead of looking at it from your brand perspective, come at it from the consumer perspective. When I go to my AI and I say, I need new insurance, could you tell me who even covers where we are? We need house and 2 cars. And the AI actually takes your location into process and goes out, and when it grounds and looks for that data, if you have a page for near my location or the town or whatever, it's returning that as the citation over the brand's main page. If on the other hand, I ask a question that is not branded, I didn't mention a brand, I didn't remember, it has slightly different behavior. So you really can optimize that these sort of highly structured focused pages on a few topics. The thing you just want to be careful about is today, there's still an element of you don't want to overtax it. So don't make that page too heavy. Make it really focused at feeding that LLM really efficient levels of data. A great way to think about it is, or a great way to test it is, you can go to an LLM as a brand. I would try to know all of them, but you would say something to the effect of, you can actually ask it, if I wanted to build a page at a level that is the most common question combinations that a user would have, what would those questions look like? What should be on one page? And it will literally tell you for your brand. A great example would be like a doctor's office or let's say a health system. So if you went and said, okay, I'm a health system, what are the questions I want? A lot of people are married to like the doctors, their credentials. No. Do you take my insurance? Right? And it's a different way of thinking. Again, it's not the brand down, it's the consumer up that I think is really, really critical. That's how you decide how to build those highly structured, more consumable platform pages. Yep.
Yext has been talking about structured data for a long time.
Yes.
Right from the very beginning. And I think sometimes people's eyes glass over a little bit, like, I don't know what you're talking about, or this is important. It feels like it's becoming more relevant than it's ever been.
I think so. Yeah.
Is there anything that people should be doing differently right now? Or what's the very first step that we recommend that they follow?
Look, I think in all of this, and I've been sort of talking with clients about this for a long time. Fundamentally, your AI strategy is just your data strategy. Okay, you're not going to create the next amazing chat. Well, maybe you will. I hope you do. But the reality is you're probably not. You're worried about how do I make the AI work for me? That's about your data strategy. The best thing brands can do is to structure all of the knowledge. And generally speaking, people think that's a really big ask. It's actually not. I'm not saying all the data, not every customer transaction, not your mailing list, not your email, not that. That's behind the firewall. I want you to only take the perspective of what is every question that I need to be able to answer for a consumer for them to want to do business with me. And so once you do that, then you can realize I'm missing all of this great data. For example, a lot of times people don't think about the events they throw. They don't think about the charities they support. They don't think about, look, if you ask an AI something like, I need new insurance again, or I need a new financial advisor. If I've told the AI that I really like working with businesses that support local charities, that's important to me, that memory goes out and looks on that structured page and says, which of these 50 advisors I could give you is actually active in their local charities? That's really important. But that's the type of thing where how we think about marketing is the aperture is going to get much wider as to why. And I always love this. It's a little bit of, I know we want to believe we make decisions for good reasons. We're all human and we actually don't make decisions for good reasons. And so if you want to have your doctor be an alumnus of the college that you love and you support, that's not how I would choose a doctor, but it is how a lot of people choose. That's one of those things where you say, you know what, make sure all of that data, because if it's possible to sway someone to you, that data should be structured and out there.
It's interesting. It actually reminds me of a very personal example. I am looking for a financial advisor right now because my situation has changed a little bit. And I actually didn't even really know what kind of financial advisor I was looking for.
Yep.
So I started with ChatGPT, started exploring. It is so good at asking questions,
Yes.
by the way, to uncover what it is that I'm looking for. And at the end, it served up some incredible information because what I really wanted was somebody who understood my situation working in tech,
Yes.
being relatively new to this scenario, as opposed to maybe someone who has a lot of inherited wealth.
Right,
And
yes.
and so it was wonderful because I got a very, very specific recommendation for an incredible woman in my community who
Yep.
understands me. And
That's ultimately if we're talking about the real unlock that AI is providing, what you just described, we would call prompt inversion, which is you might have said, hey, I need a financial advisor, because we're all still a little keywordy, and it's the tyranny of the blank box. We don't know what to type, and we're like, I don't know. What actually happens is the AI has gotten so good that it inverts it, and now it's prompting you, right? So you prompted it, and then it's like, hold on there, camper. Like, I'm not going to show you financial advisors yet. Let's have a discussion.
Yeah.
What do you need? Do you need trust in estates? Do you need and that is a really powerful thing. But what it also means is that as a brand marketer, You don't control the top or the middle of the funnel anymore. Your brand and your information needs to be in there, because as it's asking you qualifying questions, we'll stay with your example. If you're a financial advisor that's never worked with tech or never worked with executives, you're really not qualified for that, or you might be, but you didn't put it out in structured data. So it doesn't know that about you. So this is really in professional, in medical and financial, this is a really big deal. They've often just not put out a lot of information or knowledge about their involvement in local charities, like I was saying, or events. They need to start doing a lot more of that. So that takes us back to, you want to do well in AI? You need to structure your data. Your data strategy is going to determine that. And I will offer to everyone, let's say you own a store. One of the fun things you can do with this is take a photo of the inside of your store and then ask it to structure every piece of information in that photo, and it will open your eyes to what you didn't realize you should be structuring. It's incredibly powerful. So this is a way it's just a mindset change. It's just, if I was a consumer, the AI will see things like, oh, your store's not wheelchair accessible. And you may not realize, and a lot of people are certainly sensitive, but you may not realize, and that's incredibly important. And it's definitely something a consumer is going to ask on the process.
Right.
So that's the type of thing that you can do, but take a photo and try it. It's fascinating.
Oh, that's incredible. So we talked a little bit about the importance of structuring data, and this is something that I know is core to the Yext platform.
Yes.
Is there something we do differently than the way other companies do it that gives brands an advantage?
Yeah, well, there's actually several different things. Probably the most important, and what I'd like to think we're pretty well known for, is that we leverage a knowledge graph. Generally speaking, everyone that's in sort of digital marketing or what used to be presence, the whole concept was they sort of focused on, well, here's your location, and then I'm going to hang like the doctor off the location, and where they went to school off the doctor, and it's all like it's really a flat table. Not saying you can't start there, but we realized about 7 years ago that just wasn't going to work anymore. So we moved the entire architecture into a knowledge graph, where what we're doing is the doctor is an entity. The insurance they take is an entity. And if you think of it in almost like a molecule, there are connections between the entities, the relationship, the strength of the relationship. But when you look at it that way, what you start to understand is, for an AI, there is a ton of academic research on knowledge graphs are the perfect fuel for AI, because they can traverse the graph very quickly. It's more efficient than me trying to find a row and a column on a table when I really just needed to jump to the insurance first. So it treats every piece of data as highly structured in the way it's put in the actual data set. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, because of sort of our maniacal focus on getting the data right in the knowledge graph, it sets us up for success in that when we build pages for our customers, websites and web pages, it's highly structured and it's built into the graph. So when I loaded your products in, I didn't load them in some flat table somewhere. I loaded in the product, how it relates to this store, its availability, the promotion, and that you're going to showcase at an event next Tuesday. All of those things make building that page much easier, much faster, and much more structured. Again, it's one of those things of everybody wishes they structured everything, just like I wish I read to my kids every night when they were little. They don't get to it. And so I think you have to bake into this that if you start with a great approach to it, like the knowledge graph, it really sets you up for success there. And then lastly, because it's stored as a graph, all of the large language model companies, they love getting a graph dropped off because it's got that structure to it. It's also very helpful when it comes to Google search, because what we're saying is we have every way, every publisher, every platform that gets your data, we have how they want the data. This is a little known sort of fact of how we do it. We don't ship one file. If we have 250 places around the world where I'm sending your brand's data, we actually have matched it to their exact specifications of what they want to see in the structure. So there's a lot that goes into this, but it is our whole business model to make sure that that is not only ready, it's useful, but it's stored in a way that speeds up all of those interactions.
Interesting. I'm also thinking your pizza example from a few minutes ago, you were talking about you're polling everyone in the office, they all say the same thing.
Yes.
So there's also an advantage somewhere in there of ensuring that if all of your data is structured in a knowledge graph and then published at the same time across all of these things, the signal is going to be consistent.
Yeah, that's a really important point. So I think last time we might have talked about this idea of consistency and freshness. A lot of people that are in this business, they give the data to intermediaries, third parties, and those third parties then sell it to other people, but they don't sell them the whole thing. They sell them portions, or they give it once a month or once a week. There's a real problem with that, which is when I'm analyzing and trying to find those probabilities of all the data being the same, well, if the conveyor belt of data from your brand isn't in real time or as fast as possible, updating all of these different places that the large language model is looking and checking that the data is there. And classic Google search works exactly the same way. We have a ton of research called the Ron study on this. But if all that data is being updated, in a way, it disincentivized brands from making updates because it didn't change there for a month. It changed there 2 weeks and it changed there today. Even if where it changed today, it's right, the model doesn't know it's right. It just sees 3 different versions of the same thing and of what it should be the same thing. So it might see that, let's say you're out of the pea soup and you update the model. This updated it to where, yeah, they're out of the pea soup. They still think you had pea soup, and this place thinks you're a laundromat from 2 years ago. That's the problem with the data not being consistently pressed. So we worked, one of the major investments that Yext has always done is we have put an awful lot of time, energy, and an enormous amount of investment into ensuring that we can get those connections as real time as possible, as fail safe as possible, because any time that the pizza place we were talking about, the data is different, you're risking losing out to a place where the data is all the same because the probability is just much better and the confidence is much higher. Because again, if I was a large language model, which I am, and people are asking me questions, I'm doing the same thing as a human. If you came to me and said, hey, where should I go for this? I might tell you a place where not only I liked and I know all that about it, but everyone I know likes it. It's all known. And the more confident, the more likely it's going to be the answer. And again, that's classic search and large language models. So both really benefit from that real-time connectivity or just ensuring that consistency of the data. It's like anything else. If you're in the practice of having that sort of clean data set, it's always beneficial to someone trying to interpret that data set.
Amazing. So what should I walk away with today? 2 or 3 practical steps that I should take as a marketer to ensure I am showing up on AI search and traditional search, and they're talking about me in the way that I would like them to talk about me.
Yes. Yeah. And again, this is going to be an interesting time for all of us as we adapt to this understanding of in many ways, for 15 years, we've had one intermediary. Now we're going to have 30. So that fragmentation is going to happen. If I was a marketer, I think the most important things, number one, are you should check your structure. Do you have structured data today? Are you doing it well on your own website? Are you doing it in sort of like we talked those chunks where you have local representation if you're a localized brand or product presentation? You want to start thinking in this manner. And as I said, I would test the AI. Give it your webpage, ask it what's structured, what's not. It's very good at that. Ask it what should be structured. Start to experiment with this mindset that you should almost be able to see the atomic units of consumer journey where someone's going to go, I really like that shirt, but do they have my size? And I'm not there. Can I order it? There's all these pieces to that puzzle. So start to ask yourself, what are the data points that I have not gathered? There's really some obvious ones. And again, you can use a large language model for this, but you can basically just think through and say, what are we doing that we're just, in many ways, you're not getting credit for? Like, are we throwing investor relation events where we're teaching about how to pick a financial advisor? Are you getting the data about where every advisor went to school? Are you getting the product information on all the ingredients in a product? There's all these elements where if you were to gather that and it helped someone choose you, that's what you're trying to figure out. So for marketers, it's opening this aperture and stop thinking about sort of this, it's just my brand. It's actually the knowledge about your brand. And all of the knowledge about your brand is necessary to move forward in this new age.
Incredible. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
that was wonderful. I'm so excited to chat with you again soon.
Yes, thank you.